I'm CEO and one of the co-founders of BladeBridge, and I'm going to present to you, among a couple of other things, a case study of the Rathfarnham blade shelter project that we finished earlier this year. So the agenda is, I'm going to tell you quickly about BladeBridge and then about the case study, but I'm going to go through those fairly quickish because as I was putting this presentation together, after I submitted the abstract, there were two other things that I really wanted to bring in and talk about as much as possible, which is costs and shared value and how we're bridging the gap between wind asset owners and the people who will potentially purchase and pull the blade material along and use the blade material in products. And then also some work that we've been doing recently on the material handling protocol for blades destined for repurposing and to show what BladeBridge is doing in that area. So first about BladeBridge. So BladeBridge is based on it was based on the parent company Rewind, and Rewind looked at repurposing of blade material and the incoming problem of blade waste. The project started in 2018, and it was before there were many viable recycling options. So we were looking at what amount of blades we thought were coming down the line. And by 2030, we estimated there'd be about 400 blades in Ireland and about 10x in Europe, and worldwide, 43 million tons of blade material. So, but through our research in Rewind, we found that even after 25 years, the wind blades still have a lot of life left in them for structural repurposing. So they're stronger than steel and aluminum for weight. They're extremely durable, and they're capable of replacing steel and concrete when you repurpose them for structural applications. So that's what we looked at, is not recycling in grinding them up and incorporating them into other materials or sending them off for waste energy, and not reuse, which is reusing them again as wind turbine blades, but instead repurposing them, so leaving them as structural members intact as much as possible. So this is where BladeBridge comes in. So BladeBridge is based again on the Rewind Research Network, and we repurpose retired wind blades into durable products. So for wind farms and handlers of this material, we're cost competitive to recycling, and I'm going to be talking about that later in the presentation. And we help with engagement in the circular economy and really demonstrate a wind farm's engagement in the circular economy. But we're a two-sided business. We're handling waste from the wind sector or material from the wind sector. But wind farms are just half the story. So we're also working with local authorities and contractors who need to source infrastructure that's affordable, that's durable, and that meets green public procurement requirements. So we're making products that can be purchased by public authorities that meet all of these criteria. And this is an example of some of the products that we're working on. This is our Greenway collection. So furniture that can be installed along the greenways. A lot of them have bike parking incorporated into them. So far, BladeBridge has made a good handful of products so far. Greenway shelters for the Greenway. So these are two shelters that are on at the start of the Ackle Greenway that were commissioned by Mayo County Council. Pedestrian bridge, which is in the Middleton Greenway, and this was done by the Rewind project, but it's what the BladeBridge business model is based on. And we know that we can make pedestrian bridges where 80% of the steel is replaced by blades. And one of the things we're looking at is design for disassembly. So the idea that we're just storing these blades for future use. We've made street furniture for the greenways as well. These are up in Ackle again. And we've made electric bike charging hubs for ESB that are durable and better shaped, look better than anything that was able to be sourced. Finally, we've made a memorial, and this is a project we just finished in the last 2 weeks. It's a memorial for Energia in which a full B-52 blade was repurposed, and I'll be talking about that later on. But this is our first time actually taking wind asset owners' blades and repurposing it into a product for them again. So it's right in the circular economy, and this is really, we want to be working more in this space. Okay, so that's BladeBridge, and I'll present to you the Rathfarnham case study. South Dublin County Council and Clonmel Enterprises approached us in May of 2024. They were working on the Rosemount District Centre Improvement Scheme, and they wanted a centerpiece for that scheme. So the brief required covered outdoor seating, a lockable bike parking area, for the shelter to be very durable, for it to be within Clonmel's budgetary costs. We needed some design aspect to protect the seating area from the road, because we're going to be sitting right next to the road. And then we wanted to clearly demonstrate South Dublin County Council's engagement in the circular economy. And then they also agreed to use natural wood bench tops, and we find that wood really complements the blades, but there isn't always a budget to use wood as opposed to recycled plastic for the bench tops. It depends on it. There's a budget for maintenance of the material. So this is the design that we came up with, and South Dublin signed this up, and we're happy with it. And we moved on to the next step, which is blade sourcing. So we had the general concept, but we needed then to look at what blades that we had available. And BladeBridge to date has been working with just 2 different blade models. That's what we've got our hands on so far. The first are LM13s. So they're tiny blades that came from Everon up in the north. And then these were 6 bonus B39 blades from Scottish Power. And Scottish Power paid us to repurpose these blades within 24 months of receiving them in. And therefore, we wanted to prioritize the use of these blades as soon as possible. Whereas these blades we had kind of on hand to do test work with them. So we prioritized the B39 blades in designing the shelter. So in order to qualify these 2 sets of blades for structural testing, we did LiDAR scanning of both of the blades. There was extensive structural testing already done on 13-meter blades for the bridge we built previously. And then we did comparative go-no-go testing on the B39s, in which we ensured that the spar box was as strong as the LM13. And we just looked at the skin of the blade to make sure it was thick enough. And we did some reinforcing in some areas. So this testing qualified the B39 as well as the LM13 for structural, for use in this application. And just to note that Paul will be talking about Airblade later on, but Airblade, the purpose of Airblade, or one of the purposes of Airblade, is to provide open access reverse engineering of the blades in the future. So there's a catalog of blades that are characterized already for companies like BladeBridge to use in repurposing. Just a nod to Airblade. So this was the fabrication drawing. So then we went into figuring out what blades we had and where they would piece together to build the design that we come up with. So again, the B39s were prioritized. We tried to use them as much as possible. So we initially thought to use the root section as the 2 uprights, but we realized the base was probably too wide for the location that it was in. So we started with the max cord to build the 2 upright sections. So we used the max cord on 2 different blades of the B39. The roof was an 8-meter long section. So this was by far the longest thing we've built. It's actually even bigger than the bridge. It was built in Middleton. So it's an 8-meter section on the roof. So we actually ran out of B39 blades that were wide enough to form the roof section. So we did use one section of an LM13 blade, and the blades formed like a frame with polycarbonate running down the middle, which formed kind of a sunroof. The tipped sections, which are quite thin, were used as the legs. And then 5 meters of the remaining of the B39 was used as the backside wall, which protected it from the road. So this was our fabrication drawing. So then blade preparation and fabrication. So blade geometry is clearly the most challenging thing that we're dealing with in BladeBridge. We created steel brackets that would fit multiple blade models and in multiple locations along the blade, right? It's changing geometry along the blade and the different models change. We also capitalized on geometry to reduce the water ingress and roof. So if you look here, the polycarbonate is actually attached to the apex of the blade, and this, shed the water in the right direction, I suppose. We also sealed it, but it helped in protecting from some of the water coming in through the polycarbonate. Capping the blade ends, making the con ends look well, was always a challenge. We used recycled plastic and painted it. And we cut bike holes in the uprights, and the blade sections are not that heavy in the end, so the assembly we used a forklift for the assembly. But just to know that we were sponsored by the Department of the Environment through the Circular Economy Innovation Grant, And this helped us to spend some extra time really streamlining the fabrication of this shelter. And as a cyclist myself, I always know that there's a lot more, we always need more shelters. So what we're trying to do is we've streamlined the process such that we can build these higher volume, commercially viable, and we know Ireland needs more of them. I mean, look outside right now, like you're cycling. So we're really focusing on getting our shelter process and our product up commercially viable and getting some customers interested in this. So yeah. So the transport, this was one of the most interesting parts, is we knew that we had to pre-build the shelter so that we weren't kind of, hopping around the place like monkeys trying to assemble it on the day. So we wanted to drop it into place and really reduce the time, the installation time. So what this required then was brackets that were added on that allowed us to transport it. So really lash it down to the truck for transport, but also to lift it and set it down in place on the day. And we did a lot of collaboration with our transport company, and they're really amazing, Nixon College. And we really incorporated their feedback into handling of this, into the design. Okay, so this was on installation day. So this was dropping it in place. And this is on the corner of Orchard Lane and Marion Road, if anybody knows Rathfarnham, outside of the Super Value. And this was April 2025. So this is the brackets were working. We were able to, transport it safely and to lift it and drop it into place there. After the main unit was dropped down, then the back wall was installed, and then the tables and the benches were assembled. And then we added Sheffield stands on. We're trying to come up with a blade-only lockable bike parking product, but we haven't actually cracked that yet. We're working on it though. So we've had to add Sheffield stands onto this. And then we included a bridge, which is talking about the blade provenance. And it says, I'm made from retired wind blades. We came from Bardsworth Wind Farm in Donegal after generating electricity for 20 years and 20 meters long. And now we're substituting new materials as furniture. And that's really what BladeBridge is about, is substitution of new materials into much more durable products that really show engagement in the circular economy. Okay, so our first customer. So it's interesting talking to people on the day. They were worried that it was going to look garish and a little too crazy, but it actually sits really nicely into the locale. And then there was some other concerns of, there'd be teenagers hanging out and causing ruckus and stuff. And actually, apparently, the teenagers are coming there to do their homework, and so the place is crowded all the time. So there are teenagers there, but yeah. So this is what it looks like in situ now. It's outside of the Super Value there, and it's quite cozy, and the sun's coming in through the roof. So we were really pleased with this. Yeah. And South Dublin were pleased as well. So segueing into costs. So everybody asked, like, isn't this more expensive? Well, yes. So I'm just going to talk about a couple of different cost aspects and just remind you again that it's a two-sided business. BladeBridge is, servicing the wind sector, but also county councils building furniture, right? So we're a two-sided business. So yes, the BladeBridge products for now are at the high end of the acceptable range for public infrastructure. So we are struggling for a product market fit with public infrastructure. So wind farms, we think, should expect to pay a gate fee for the disposal of the blades. So don't this is good money that's going into us, right? So the repurposing fee, we call the repurposing fee, is basically our gate fee, and it funds the design and the business development of blade products. So it helps us, develop more products and find customers. So we feel that a commercially balanced repurposing fee can reduce the cost of blade-based public infrastructure, right? So this will encourage greater uptake by the local authorities. So this in turn drives demand for repurposed blade products, which ensures more blades are diverted from waste into long-life community assets. So the repurposing fee that we're getting can supplement the cost of this furniture, thereby driving more uptake of it. We really want the furniture to be in the public realm. We don't want to just go for private customers and sell them at high end. We want high volume in the public space, and we're just trying to find that match. Another aspect of this, though, is we can share the repurposing fee with wind asset owners. So wind asset owners who create a demand for blade products we can waive the repurposing fee or part of it. Okay, so for example, Energia, we just finished this project with Energia in Mina Dream. So there was a V52 blade that's decommissioned, been sitting on the ground for the last 5 years. Energia contacted us to create a memorial and a set of furniture which would fully use the entire V52 blade. So they wanted to make a memorial, and then they said, just use up the rest of the blade. We completed this project a few weeks ago, and no repurposing fee was charged because Energia created the demand for the products made from their own blades. So with this space, like with this in mind, wind asset owners can really get the cost of their waste or their management of blade material right down. So when people start saying, oh, is recycling more expensive or not, this is a very fluid space right now, and we're creating it. So we're really interested in talking to wind asset owners to provide input into the repurposing fee and how we can share this, this cost and make it mutually beneficial. All right. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is something we're working with a consultant right now called Turbine, who are experts in the end of waste space. So I want to talk about the material handling protocol for blade purposing that we're working on, and this is So handling of Irish blades that are destined for repurposing there's different rules in the UK as opposed to Ireland. Okay, and it's purely how the environmental agencies in the different jurisdictions are interpreting the end of waste process. And I'll be happy to talk to anybody about this afterwards. So if this isn't clear, ask any questions. In Ireland, per the Irish EPA, blades destined for repurposing do not have to be designated as waste. Okay, so we've been told by the EPA that if the asset owner says, we want these blades repurposed, they do not have to go through the waste regime. They do not have to be in the waste regime. And therefore, BladeBridge can take blades originating in the Republic of Ireland immediately. We've already done this. We're open for business. There's no barrier in the waste management aspects of BladeBridge handling blades originating in the Republic of Ireland. Okay. Northern Ireland and Scotland and England are different. They're a different interpretation of the end of waste. So blades that are designated as waste, so blades are designated as waste upon decommissioning. They interpret this as if the material is used for anything other than its original use, it needs to go through the waste regime. Okay. So, however, BladeBridge can work with material handlers to process blades through the end of waste, and processed blades can then be transferred to BladeBridge for repurposing. So we do have a method of taking in blades that originated in Northern Ireland. And in addition, BladeBridge will have a waste permit and the end of waste procedures in partnership with the Remine consultants that we're working with by the end of this year. And this will streamline the handling of blades originating in Northern Ireland, Scotland, England, and the EU will include that in. So, okay. So in summary, blades can be repurposed at volume into durable public infrastructure, such as the shelter that we showed you in Rathfarnham. A commercially balanced repurposing fee, we believe, can increase blade repurposing, and BladeBridge is legally allowed to receive blades from the Republic of Ireland immediately. So thank you very much. We're kicking off lunch and learns also, so if you'd like to book a lunch and learn with us, you can book us here, and then please feel free to contact us to discuss future projects or the commercial aspects of the repurposing fee. I'd really love some feedback on that. So,
what's a lunch and learn?
It's where a company brings somebody in to talk during lunch.
Sorry.
yeah. So it's okay. Questions or